When we first arrived, and I think this kind of goes for every single day that we were there, the feeling of being there is pristine and untouched.
It was so beautiful in that area. I didn't want to miss any of it.
It totally surprised me. It was not what I expected. It reminded me of other parts of Europe that I've been in, but wilder and more primitive without being coarse. It was just beautiful.
You know, it was interesting to go to Albania because it was the first time for me where I traveled somewhere, and I haven't traveled to many places, where I didn't know one word of the local language. So you know, you arrive and you just hear this foreign language and not one word is triggering anything in your mind as to what you might know what that word might be. And so we get into the car and we head over to pick up the Europeans, the Germans, and getting out of the city and just seeing the greenery, it's like, okay, this is going to be pretty amazing.
In May of 2019, 8 Americans joined 6 Germans and their 2 Italian hosts to embark on an adventure in a country they never expected to visit, going places the locals never expected them to go. This is Discovering Albania through the eyes of a canyoneer.
I was climbing out of a gully. We're in a canyon, a really beautiful canyon called Falling Leaf, which I highly recommend. And it was towards the end. We were climbing out of a really steep gully, and it had rained recently, so a rock dislodged above. And I was out of the way, doing what I can to be safe. It hit the wall, and then after it hit the wall, it came right at me. So I saw it coming at me. I went to jump out of the way, and it slammed into my right hip and pretty much shattered the side of my pelvic bone. If you look at my x-rays, you'll see it's rounded on one side and straight on the other.
Well, so what did you do to prepare for the trip because of that injury? Because you obviously had limited mobility because of that.
I did a lot of high elevation steep hikes, thinking that if I was constantly going uphill, then that, you know, with the leg movement, that would help. And every time I finished one of those hikes, I was like, I feel pretty good. When I walked into Albania with that first canyon, I was like, I could do this. Like, I'm ready. It's gonna be a great week.
I was very happy to see water because I did not expect the canyons to have a lot of water in them. So the sound of the water always gets my adrenaline going, and I was very happy that the canyon started with a waterfall.
So we got out of the car, looked over the bridge, saw the water churning below.
And we pull up to this pull out for the first canyon, and like Danielle said, I mean, right out the get-go, it's a waterfall.
I think most of us were impressed with the first canyon. Anyway, we get out and we have thunder and lightning moving in, and my car doesn't start.
Oh.
What was going through your guys' head as we had our first issue on day 1?
So I was riding in Pascal's car for those couple days, and I remember as we were driving away, I felt so anxious for him, like thinking about like how were we gonna get this car, and I was definitely more into the logistics of it. And he just seemed to be totally nonchalant, relaxed, just like, okay, we'll see what happens. You know, we'll get the car, we won't get the car, I'll call the rental company, maybe they'll go get it. Just rolled off of him. He didn't even break a sweat.
I just remember sitting in the car and just kind of still, you know, feeling a little pumped after doing that canyon and just anticipating what the rest of the week might be, not paying attention to anybody around me or what's going on. And then next thing you know, I hear, oh, the car's not starting. And it's like, what? You know? And I just remember immediately thinking, okay, this is just part of the adventure. Nothing to worry about. It'll all get figured out.
And figure it out, we did. We traveled all across Albania, descending one canyon after the next, route finding, jumping, swimming and sliding our way through some of the deepest and darkest canyons we've ever explored. The obstacles continued, with muddy roads and deep ruts. We fixed flats and got ourselves unstuck. Liz, of course, wasn't fully healed. She had to call it quits after Holta, but she didn't give up. She fought her way back into a demi and found her absolute limit.
10 minutes of gorgeous, amazing fun and beauty. I don't regret anything. Albania!
She spent her time interacting with the locals and diving into the culture. The piece that made this canyon trip like no other.
And every morning we were waking up to the sound of cowbells and then, breakfast from the chickens that are on their farms and the fruits and vegetables that they grew. And the same thing we got back in the afternoons. I spent a lot of time in the guest houses, walking around the area and just kind of exploring. And everything we ate was grown on their land. From the onions to the stinging nettle that we were eating. They were and as you guys were gone, they were picking it all out and going in the kitchen. There was not a second that I spent in that country that I wasn't just thoroughly enjoying myself, whether it was in a canyon or out walking around.
I was done getting dressed. It was an older woman. She was dressed in all black. And she put her hand on my chest, kind of like a very endearing moment, like, I can't, like the communication was just physical, body language. And it was like, I can't believe you're here and that you're doing this. You're so lovely, have fun. And I grabbed her hand and I just held it with, on top of her hand. And we just had this little moment. And it was just like, oh, this is just so lovely. It's nice.
This particular trip, every single canyon was very distinctive. Every canyon, the rock and the colors and the water improved. So each canyon that we did was one step better than the one that we'd done before, with a few little tiny exceptions. But in general, I thought the trip was very well organized in terms of the sequence of the canyons that we ran, because they just continued to get more impressive and better. And by the time we finished the trip, we were getting into these 5-star world-class canyons.
Go now, don't wait. It's there, it's ready, it's waiting for a really, really unique, special adventure.